Get rid of that. Thank you ever so much, Angela. Thank you for that fantastic introduction, and thank you so much for coming here to see Angela and myself and Chi speak in Newcastle. I'm delighted to be here. It's one of my favourite parts of the country. I've been everywhere, and I'm not saying that everywhere. I promise you, it truly is a wonderful, wonderful city. I wish I was spending more time here, but I'm going to be making the most of it this morning. And I'm so delighted you come to see me. I'm so delighted to be making what I think is one of the most important speeches that I intend to make during this leadership contest. The Labour Party always has to be about our economy. We always have to be about speaking to the future of Britain, speaking for Britain and being the party that understands what the future looks like, what the challenges look like. When we look backwards, we lose. And so today for me is about understanding our history, standing on the shoulders of our history and our great movement, but looking ahead to what the challenges of the future, in particular what a post-Brexit world looks like for Labour and for working people across this country. And I just want to say once more that I'm so grateful for Angela for introducing me today. And yeah, Angela is one of the... Angela is a friend and a comrade and a wonderful, wonderful person and a great pioneer in our movement and a great leader in Labour, and I am just very proud to have her supporting me and very proud to have her standing at my side throughout this whole contest and thereafter, as Angela will always be alongside me. So it's a pleasure to be here in Campus North in Newcastle, in a part of Britain that has got a long and proud history in the Labour movement. Ellen Wilkinson, of course, another great Labour woman MP, one of the standard bearers for her generation, one of the people who was on that great march from Jarrow in the 1930s when 200 men, largely men of course, marched from Jarrow to London to petition for the right to work. A march and an attitude that shaped this country, shaped the subsequent response of Labour governments to unemployment, to the formation of the welfare state. Newcastle and Jarrow acting at the heart of shaping the Labour movement, and a powerful reminder to us as leaders of the current generation of the Labour Party that we must always listen to the grassroots in our movement. We must always listen to the people in our movement. And something we've got to be doing today, perhaps more so than for a long period, it's vital that we in the current leadership of the Labour Party listen hard to the people. And I say that because I think that Brexit vote on June the 23rd was a cry for help in many regards for our country, a cry for a politics that was going to respond better to people and respond to what people see as very deep-seated crises in our economy. It was unmistakably, in my view, a call for change in Britain. And that's what I want to talk about today, how we respond to it, how the Labour Party seeks to shape the future of Britain and reshape our economy so that it works for us all. Because for me, that decision on June the 23rd was the best example we've seen of a rejection of Tory austerity. It was a demand to take back control, yes, but it was a rejection of where we've been, not just under the Tories, but for a long time. But my goodness, it's got worse under the Tories, because I think it was a rejection of an economic consensus that has been allowed to grow up in Britain over a 30-year period since the 1980s, a consensus that saw Margaret Thatcher subordinate the needs of the real economy, the productive industrial economy of Britain, for the City of London and the demands of financial services. And it delivered an economy that is too reliant on financial services, one that specialises still in designing financial services and financial vehicles, not making real vehicles that we can drive about in and power our economy. You know, in 1982, 1 in 5 of our employees in Britain were in manufacturing. Now it's less than 1 in 10. 30% just about of our economy, our GDP, was derived from manufacturing services. Under the Tories, it's dipped below 10% for the first time. It's now at 9.6% and declining. And that has driven the regional imbalances in our economy that we see right across the country. We're just too dependent on the city, too dependent on those financial services. And what has it led to? For ordinary people, it's led to earnings stagnating, it's led to greater insecurity in the workplace, and it's led to a rise in household debt, higher household debt than we've had for generations. High-skilled and secure manufacturing jobs have disappeared, making the way for low-security, low-wage jobs in so many parts of Britain. And we've got to be honest, New Labour didn't do enough to change it. We didn't. We had an opportunity, and we changed a lot, but we didn't change the rules of the game. We invested in public services. We got 1 million pensioners out of poverty. We raised 1 million children out of poverty. We trebled spending on our NHS. We invented Sure Start. We introduced the minimum wage that those men in Jarrow had campaigned for, and we delivered. But we didn't do enough to change the rules of the game. We didn't change the fundamental structural problems in our economy. And that's what's allowed the Tories to do what they've done recently. It's what's allowed them to accelerate the drive towards a low-wage, insecure economy for working people. Fewer manufacturing jobs, more services. A services surplus and a massive goods deficit for the country. Remember that George Osborne debate about the March of the Makers? Well, we all know it was complete rhetoric and no reality. The Northern Powerhouse, the day he announced it, they were spending 24 times as much per head on infrastructure and transport in London as they were doing anywhere across the north of England. That's the reality of the Tory investment. Starving the NHS of the funds we need, cutting affordable homes across our country, underfunding our schools, going after workers' rights. What on earth is the justification for introducing the vindictive, anti-democratic trade unions bill at the very moment at which we should be safeguarding workers' rights in this country, standing up for them against this insecure, globalised world where they are struggling, all of our families, to make their way? What do the Tories do? They introduce a means to suppress the voice of workers in the workplace. It tells you everything you need to know about them. Our task, however, in opposition, is not just to list the litany of failure from this Tory government. There are many failures, but it isn't enough for us to simply go after them, because people know it. They know their jobs are more insecure. They know patients can't get an appointment with the doctors, or that the waiting lists are rising. They know that Britain is becoming a tougher place for you to get on and for your family to get on. What they want to know about from us is, what do we think the future looks like? How are we going to change this? How are we going to fix these systemic problems in our economy? So that's what I want to talk about today. And I want to talk first of all about Europe, because it's become very clear to me that that decision, whichever way you voted, and whether you thought you were doing the right thing for your family and your community, I think it is now becoming increasingly clear that it is going to make it more difficult for people to get on in this country. The risks we warned about were very real for jobs, for wages, for security in the workplace, for ordinary people. And the market's response to this shows they've got any faith in the future of the British economy post-Brexit. And let me be clear, neither do I. Because my grave worry is that the Tories will use this as an excuse to further strip out workers' rights, to rid us of the environmental protections and the social advances that we made under Europe. Now, I'm very clear. Jeremy Corbyn isn't to be blamed for this. He's not to blame for us leaving Europe, but he could have fought a lot harder. He could have fought a damn sight harder during that campaign. He could have stood up and said there is more than just workers' rights in Europe. There is a philosophy that we believe in internationalism, in collaboration, in cooperation between peoples in this country and across the world. He could have made that case. And if we'd made that case, then we might not be where we are, which is coughing and spluttering out of the door of Europe. And I tell you one other thing that I will say to Jeremy time and time again. He was wrong to say on the day after that vote that we should now get on with it and leave Europe. Totally wrong. And And the reason he's so wrong, is he's giving a free pass to the Tories on this. It's easy for them. You know, he's saying to Liam Fox and David Davis and Priti Patel and all the rest of them, we can walk out the door in Europe. He's giving them a free pass to do what they will do, which is downplay those workers' rights, take back the freedoms we've won, get rid of the protections for the environment Europe helped develop. And I am determined that that will not happen if I am the leader of this party. That's why I've been clear. We should have the courage to make these arguments. We should have the courage to stand up for what we believe in. I've been clear. We should have the courage to make these arguments. We should have the courage to stand. We want a shadow Brexit minister sat alongside your ministers with our mandate, arguing for us remaining part of the European Union. And we want to make the case. We want to make the case. And when we make that case, when we have the courage to stand up for what we believe in, not some last-minute Damascene conversion to the cause, but a genuine faith in us being part of a European Union that we wish to shape, when we've got that courage, we should then have the courage at the end of this, when the lies have been exposed and stripped away, and we know what the real deal that we will be offered in the European Union, we should then have the courage to put it back to the British people, to say to them, we trust you to either rubber stamp or reject this deal. That's leadership. That's leadership, not standing by and serving the Tories, standing up against the Tories and standing for what we believe in. The second thing we've got to do is safeguard the economy in the short term. So last week, the Bank of England, I presume lots of you will have seen it, they set out their plans and they took an extraordinary, unprecedented step to cut interest rates in this country to their lowest level for 300 years and to inject an extra £60 billion through quantitative easing into the economy. You know, the reason for that is they are the experts. I'm not like Michael Gove. I still think experts have got something to add to this conversation. And the experts are telling us, aren't they, that we're standing on the edge of another recession. Let's be as bold as that. We can see a recession coming round the corner. Consumer and business confidence gone through the floor. Mark Carney warning about 250,000 jobs going, inflation rising, wages being further suppressed. And who's going to pay the price for this? Once again, won't be the bankers. I don't know about you lot, but I'm still tamping mad that not a single banker went to jail for a recession that has been paid for by working people in this country. And I'm not going to stand by and see this happen again. Quantitative easing may be necessary. But let's be blunt, we've spent a lot of money in this country over the last 6 years. The best part of now £450 billion refloating the banks in this country. I think it's about time we started floating the people in Britain. Not the bankers. Let's start looking to ordinary people. Because they will pay the price. It will be ordinary working people who see their jobs disappear and their wages further downgraded. That is what will happen unless we are a much more muscular government. And that requires Labour to tell the current government what they should be doing. Because QE isn't playing through to the economy at large. There is still, outside London and the South East, a massive deficit in finance for our business. Small businesses in particular, the backbone of our economy in so many parts of Britain, struggling to access the finance they need to maintain the level of employment. And the question is not whether we can afford to do more. The real question, my friends, is can we afford not to? Can we afford to leave our children with crumbling infrastructure, with the prospect of an NHS further in difficulty? Is anybody surprised that the NHS right across Britain is currently in deficit? Always happens under the Tories. Every single time. The reason? They hate the NHS. They fundamentally hate it. They don't want it because they know it's the greatest institution that represents what we believe in. The pooling of risk, the sharing of rewards, looking after one another through a universal service. That's what the NHS stands for, and it is why they will always seek to destroy it. And we have to stand up for them. We have to be a much more powerful opposition. So to complement the monetary activity that the bank are undertaking, I say we've got to be a government in waiting that says there's much more we could do to stimulate this. I've been really clear. We should have a £200 billion British New Deal. We should be spending 50 billion of that in the north of England. Enough of this rhetoric. Let's get on with the reality of investing in the parts of Britain that once drove our country forward and right now are being held back by a lack of finance, by a lack of investment, by a lack of imagination and intervention by the government. I believe that we should be committing at least 20 billion of that money immediately. A fiscal stimulus from the government for what they call shovel-ready projects. I think what they mean by that is things that are ready to go tomorrow. And there are loads of them. Infrastructural developments, electrifying our railways, building the FE colleges we need, housing. We should be building 300,000 houses a year in Britain. We should be liberating our councils to build housing. We should be getting on with this tomorrow. We know there's a housing crisis. How on earth are our children going to afford to buy their homes? The Tories talk about wanting a home-owning democracy. Well, I don't see how my kids are going to be able to afford it. I drove past the house which I bought with my wife in London when we were in our early 20s just last week. I couldn't afford to buy it today. I couldn't afford to buy it if I became the Prime Minister of this country. Now, that tells us something has gone dramatically wrong with our economy, doesn't it? It tells us that we've got to be much more active at changing it. So government should bring forward all of these things. Bring forward the autumn statement in order to make clear precisely what it is they want to do. And if short-term action is necessary, then long-term reform of those structural problems I mentioned is totally essential. First of all, we need fair taxes to deliver world-beating public services. That's why I've set out my plans for a tax on wealth in this country, for getting corporations to pay their fair share. And I will use that money directly to raise real-term spending on the public services that we all rely on. I'll spend an extra 4% per year on health and social care, making good on the promise the last Labour government made to get us up to the European averages, not falling behind as the Tories are doing, but raising up our NHS and caring for the elderly in our society. Secondly, we've got to stamp out this insecure, low-paid work. We've got to have a strategy to improve both the quality and the pay for the jobs. That's why I've set out my plans already to deliver world-beating rights at work, plans to tackle exploitation, reduce insecurity, boost the voice of workers across Britain, end the public sector pay freeze, repeal the Trade Unions Act, make good on the promise that John Smith made for Labour back in 1992, rights on day one at work, clarity for workers, what their rights are, who their representatives are, what we should be earning in the world. And I've set out my plans too to boost real pay. The country needs a pay rise. Working people need a pay rise in this country. Wages have stagnated now for a generation. Let's end that public sector pay freeze tomorrow. But let's have a proper living wage. Not this con job from the Tories, the national living wage so-called. It should be £8.25 an hour, not £7.20. That would mean a £5,000 boost for 18 to 21-year-olds. It would mean a £2,000 boost for anybody working on the living wage. That's what people in this country deserve. They deserve a government that is ambitious for them, that is determined to bend every sinew in order to deliver for working people. And that's the sort of government Labour should want to be. It's the sort of government I want to lead. I want to deliver the biggest boost to workers' pay that we've seen in a generation. We should have nothing less than that as our ambition. And we've got to do much more. Rebalance our economy, as I say. Create these high-skilled, high-pay jobs. To do that, we need nothing less than a new industrial revolution in this country. That's the sort of language that Labour should be articulating. That's the sort of aspiration we should have for Britain. I want to make Britain the workshop of the world once more. Not content with providing a few services, but making things. Doesn't mean taking us back. Isn't some plan to reopen the pits or the coal mines. It's a serious plan, a forward-looking plan. Yes, we learn the lessons of the past, but we think harder about what we're going to do for the future, because the government is still predicting a further decline in manufacturing jobs in this country. They're sanguine about the prospect of those key manufacturing jobs in the northeast and elsewhere disappearing. We can't sit by and simply accept that that's going to happen. In truth, the last Labour government, in my view, was too sanguine about the inevitability of those jobs disappearing, going south or going east across the world. Manufacturing in Germany still makes up 25% of their GDP. In our country, as I say, it's 10%. That's a choice. That's a choice. Politics is all about choices, and they took different choices to us. And we need to learn from them and take different choices in future. We mustn't accept this decline as inevitable. A new digital technology has the capacity to transform the world of work. Yes, old collective workplaces are going, but they're being replaced by new digital empowered workplaces. We're right next door to one here in Newcastle. We can create these new jobs of the future. Bank of England's warning that automation is going to wipe out 50 million jobs. I'm not pessimistic as they are. I think there is massive overstatement of the way in which those jobs are going to be eroded. We've got to be much more optimistic about our capacity to make things in this country, to get back to being a real industrial powerhouse. And to benefit from all this, we've got to bring forward new ideas. The Labour Party's always got to be looking forward. Newcastle, for example. Great engineering hub in years gone by, now one of the high-tech hubs in this country. Other parts of this country, North Wales, Cornwall, becoming hubs for high-tech manufacturing, for distance working. The Californias of Britain. Why aren't we bolder at describing this world of the future for Labour? Why aren't we back to thinking about what the white-hot heat of the technological revolution could look like in 2016, not in 1964? All of these things are doable for us. If we've got an active industrial strategy, if we've got a muscular, interventionist Labour government that believes in investing in people. And to do all this, you've got to have financial support behind it. There's the difference between the rhetoric you get from the Tories and indeed from Jeremy Corbyn and what I'm talking about. I'm talking about practical ways in which we provide the support in order to sustain this industry of the future. So that 200 billion I've talked about, we should be spending 40 billion of that intervening in order to create the industries of the future. We should be investing as government in the new industries of the future, boosting our exports. It means learning from the mistakes we've made over the last 3 decades, in which we've assumed that the markets would simply redistribute resources and allocate things efficiently. It doesn't work. It isn't working. It's leaving people high and dry languishing on low wages in insecure work. It's driving this gross regional inequality across this country. And we've got to wake up to it and do something about it. So I will invest in every corner of the UK, in particular thinking about ways in which we generate new regional economies, clusters of industry and universities across Britain in order to drive forward a new technological industrial revolution. I will drive up expenditure on R&D to the 3% we need to be delivering if we're even to compete in this country. We're down at about 1%. We are languishing at the bottom of the league tables when it comes to investing in the industry that we need in this country. And the Tories are happy to let it happen, because what they want is a British state that floats free off Europe, like a Singapore or a Hong Kong, simply providing financial services to the rest of the world. That won't work for Newcastle. That won't work for Pontypridd. That won't work for the Midlands. It won't work for our ex-industrial areas, which are the parts of the country that feel so desperately in need of a government acting on their behalf. That's what we, the Labour Party, need to be thinking much more about. Do you know, in America, they're creating a new factory right now, Tesla, the electric car company. They're investing £5 billion with government support to create an electric battery factory, a gigafactory they're calling it, that within 10 years is going to be producing more batteries than the rest of the world combined. Why aren't we doing that in Britain? Why isn't that something we're doing in this country? Why are we doing it in Newcastle? What have we done to capitalise on renewables energies in this country? Why is it we didn't have any means of capitalising on the growth of wind power in this country? What are we doing to capitalise on wave technology across Britain? Why does it make sense for a privately owned renewables company to invest over 100 years with government subsidy in harnessing the energy of the Severn estuary? If it makes sense for them, why doesn't it make sense for the people to do that? Why doesn't it make sense for the Labour government to invest in the future of our country and in the future of our energy? Unlike the Tories, I do believe in state ownership of energy companies, and I think they should be our state, not the Chinese or the French. It seems to me the Tories are happy for our state energy to be in the hands of any state other than the UK. That's what it feels like to me every day, especially the Chinese. They're very keen on them as far as I can see. And the Green Investment Bank, you know, it's a great idea, but have you seen what the Tories are planning to do? They're going to privatise it. That's their plan. That's their plan for securing green investment. It's just wrong. It's wrong for green energy, it's wrong for our environment, it's wrong for our economy, it's wrong for Britain. So far, they've only committed to spend £2.7 billion. They should be spending far more than that. We should be investing. So if I'm the leader of this party and the Prime Minister of Britain, I'd be committing £15 billion, a massive boost to green energy, capitalising the Green Infrastructure Bank, making sure that we were in the vanguard of the next generations of industry, as we have been in the past. If I'm the leader of this party, I promise you this: I'm not going to sit back and allow this country to be buffeted by the winds of globalisation. I'm not going to sit back and assume that we can't make things in Britain. I'm not going to sit back and assume that other countries are always going to steal a march on us. I'm not going to sit back and see the innovations that come out of our universities and our colleges capitalised upon by other nations and by other parts of the world. I'm going to fight for these things. Because the reason we fight for them is it's parts of Britain where we need jobs that will benefit most from that sort of an active, interventionist, industrial government, a muscular, powerful government in this country. Not talking about reopening the coal mines, not talking about going back to picking winners, but smart, strategic government on the side of the people. We are the People's Party. This is a party that always looks forward on their behalf. We're not a protest movement. We're not a debating society. We're not someone who just shakes our fist through the bars at those in power. We're a party that is designed to win power in Britain on behalf of the people. And we win for a purpose. We win not just for the winning. We win not to trade our principles for power. We win in order to transact those principles into power. I will bow to no one in my Labour principles. I am a socialist, and I believe in practical, credible, modern socialism, implementing our values in power. But to do that, you've got to win it. To do that, you've got to hold it. I'm just going to end with this. The reason we're all here today is we love this Labour movement. You know, I've grown up in it, Angela's grown up in it, Chi and Roberta, all of us, all of you. You're all here today because you love the Labour Party. And the reason you love it is not out of some blind faith to something called the Labour Party. It's because you know what we are. We're the greatest force for social good, for social mobility, for economic justice this country has ever seen, and one of the greatest forces the world has ever seen. And it is breaking my heart to see the Labour Party at such low ebb. It is breaking my heart that the Tories, you know, yesterday they're proposing to reintroduce grammar schools in Britain. You know, my parents, one went to a grammar school, the other went to secondary modern, one went to university, the other went to... I'm not having that in Britain. I'm not having us return to that sort of a backward-looking, you know, privilege being entrenched in this country sort of society. We moved on from that decades ago. And the Tories right now are rampant, utterly rampant. They've destroyed our policy on climate change. They're destroying the NHS. They are going to destroy our education system. We should be furious that this is happening on our watch. And we should say to Jeremy and everybody in the Labour Party who doesn't think winning matters as much as I think it matters, that's what you get if we do not win. You get a Tory party in perpetuity, undoing not just the legacy of the recent Labour government, but undoing 70 years of work by the people of this country through their Labour Party. That is what is happening on our watch. And I tell you what, if you put your faith in me, if you back me to be the leader of this party, I won't stand for it, and I will work for you every single day, and I promise I will not let you down.